Welcome back to Econo Chat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. Week 18 it is of our episodes. You can of course catch on. If you have missed the previous episodes, you can go to Energy 100 FM on YouTube to find us, or you can go to economist.com.na and find us there and catch up on what we have spoken about previously. Of course, Mr. Daniel Steinman is here in studio with us, and we spoke about budget before we went on a break. Let's continue that chat, Mr. Steinman.
Okay, let's recap where we were.
Okay.
And we were talking about GDP, and I was explaining that GDP is the base calculation, the departure point for the entire budget.
Yeah.
But I also gave you a very practical example of how budget allocations work, the execution side of the budget. And if you don't get all of these elements together, it doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen the way that you intend it to happen. Now, this is very important. What is the intention of the budget? Now, you will remember, Elsabe, I said the GDP, that base calculation, is the combined output of the entire country, the whole economy.
The whole economy.
And there the figure is 197 billion. And it is up from 186.9 billion the previous year. And the figure for 2023 is 208 billion. Two fairly significant jumps in GDP estimates 2 years in a row. And the reason was the 5 preceding poor years.
Yeah.
So at some point, everything that we've been dumping into the economy must start showing a result. And I assume this is what the Minister and the National Planning Commission had in mind when they basically had to form a view on what will the economy do.
Re-imaging,
yep, it's very fancy, very semantic, very philosophical, you know. But it's all tied to very specific amounts, very detailed, right up to small amounts. And have you ever seen the budget documentation in printed format?
I've seen it, but to be honest with you, Mr. Steinman, I don't read it as I'm am supposed to read it to have an understanding.
Yeah.
But I browse through it to have my type of understanding. But of course, you are here to explain it to us.
It's like telephone directories, but it also serves the same purpose. Nobody can go and read all those allocations to all the votes and all those small projects and functions and.
Yeah.
But when there's a query, or when there's a dispute, or when there's something with which, from a political perspective, people don't agree, they go to that telephone directory, just like you would use a telephone directory. I don't think today's people use telephone directories anymore, do they?
They don't.
Okay, but I'm sure they've seen one.
I hope so.
Yeah, so that is this very thick books that the ministry publish. Fortunately, nowadays, mostly electronically, you don't have this enormous waste of paper anymore. But that besides the point. The important thing is the revenue is expected to increase by about 12% to 70.9 billion. So let's make it 71 billion.
Okay.
That is a significant increase in revenue, but it's also based, the minister referred to very specific players in the economy, and this is mostly attached to mining. That should generate a bigger revenue this year for the government, and I think we will see whether we get to 71 billion revenue. So it's income for the government. That nobody can know that in advance, but what we will see in about 12 months from now is how feasible is it? How close did we get to it? And if we're very lucky, that we actually manage to surpass it, to get in a little bit more than what we planned for.
Yeah.
And don't think that is a daydream. It happened last year. It was 185 point something, and it turned into 186.9, you know, the revenue for the government. And the expenditure side this year is, I think, it's 59 point something. Let's say 60 billion.
60. Okay.
So what you get now is you have an income of, no, it's the other way around. You have an income of about 60 billion, and you have expenses of about 71 billion. So there's a shortfall. There's a deficit. And remember, I explained in somewhat detail last week, how do you finance that deficit?
Yeah.
But the principle is that a budget can always finance a deficit. There are ways and means of financing deficit. And it is not as if somebody walks around with a pot full of honey and just dish it out. This is very structured. It's very integrated into the rest of the economy. So the question that we need to ask us, looking at the bigger picture of the budget, is first of all, how realistic is that revenue, the projection for revenue? And the second question is, will the ministry be able to contain the expenditure side to that level that it has budgeted for? Now, you will remember that every year come October, we get this, what we call the additional budget, but it is actually, the fancy name is the Additional Appropriation Bill.
They use that word.
Yes. To cover expenses that were unforeseen or not provided for in the main budget. The whole idea is that you don't want to go and increase the total expenditure through the Additional Appropriation Bill. And what the government has done very effectively over the last 4 years is to get an idea, to get feedback from all the ministries on underspending, meaning where there's money in the kitty that was allocated but not actually expended on the specific topic or project for which it was intended. So it means that you have some money lying loose in all the ministries' accounts. Now, this is not money that you must disregard or just think that it's unimportant. The adjustments, so what they do is where there's money available, they reappropriate. They take it back, put it ugly, and then they reallocate it where it's needed more. And I think the adjustments came to about 83 million last year. So, and nothing, that didn't increase the borrowings. It was just by using unspent money and reassigning them to places where there's a shortfall to sort of get the balance closer to what it should be, to optimal,
Okay, so they reallocate that money to other ministries.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Or even in a ministry to other projects.
Oh, okay.
Or to other functions.
All right.
But it's the principle is there's a very nice French word for it, which I can never remember. Something, not engagement. That is but it's one of those, you see it all the time in reports. Virement. The Americans talk about
English,
the Americans talk about vitamins.
Oh, okay.
but there's no such thing as a vitamin.
They are a special breed.
It's only because they don't know French. But virement is a recognized principle worldwide. You reallocate your available funds. And you prioritize it. And there where it's left over, you basically take it back and you go give it to somebody else and say, go pay for that road between Grootfontein and Sombui. But in this last minute, I want to show you or explain to you something very practical about the budget.
Okay.
The agency that is responsible for marketing and promoting fresh produce, AMTA, Agricultural Marketing and Something Agency. There's a whole lot of debate around AMTA and about them being underfunded and people being disgruntled, not being paid their salaries, and it's all political and there's a whole lot of noise. So something like AMTA is very important that the allocation in the budget is very clear and that the line ministries, whether it's agriculture or roads or works or whatever, where they have to execute their job, that they can do it. Now you may ask me, but why? They've got a shed in Ondangwa, and I think they've got a facility here in Windhoek, and they import stuff and they sell fresh fruit and veggies, and they get from local producers. They get stuff in. But now picture this. If you have a small field where you grow watermelons and you produce 1,000 watermelons, which is not a lot, but you stay 5 or 10 or 15 kilometers away from Amta or the market. How do you get those watermelons to the market? Think about this. People don't think about it, What is the importance of the budget?
Yeah.
It has to enable Amta to send a truck to go collect your watermelons, because you can't put 1,000 watermelons on the back of a bakkie.
Of course you can't.
Yeah, you see.
You can't.
And this is where people, they divorce their thinking from practical reality. And this is what you want to achieve in the budget. That there's an allocation for Amta that enables them to send a truck around to all the producers, pick up all the watermelons and take them to the market. Otherwise, they're just going to frot there in the field and they will become donkey food and not go to the market.
And that's why it's important to also understand the budget once again.
Yes.
And to understand why the government has these portions of amounts, allocated to the different ministries. It's because at the end of the day, it all links together, and that's where we can work together to make this country a better country.
100%.
Yeah, that's it, what we have for you guys today on the Econo Chat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman, editor of Economist Namibia, as well as economic analyst. He is. This was Elsie Dimiani on the Econo Chat. Let's talk business. We will continue with more next week with week 19. Welcome back to Econo Chat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. Week 18 it is of our episodes. You can of course catch on. If you have missed the previous episodes, you can go to Energy 100 FM on YouTube to find us, or you can go to economist.com.na and find us there and catch up on what we have spoken about previously. Of course, Mr. Daniel Steinman is here in studio with us, and we spoke about budget before we went on a break. Let's continue that chat, Mr. Steinman.
Okay, let's recap where we were.
Okay.
And we were talking about GDP, and I was explaining that GDP is the base calculation, the departure point for the entire budget.
Yeah.
But I also gave you a very practical example of how budget allocations work, the execution side of the budget. And if you don't get all of these elements together, it doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen the way that you intend it to happen. Now, this is very important. What is the intention of the budget? Now, you will remember, Elsabe, I said the GDP, that base calculation, is the combined output of the entire country, the whole economy.
The whole economy.
And there the figure is 197 billion. And it is up from 186.9 billion the previous year. And the figure for 2023 is 208 billion. Two fairly significant jumps in GDP estimates 2 years in a row. And the reason was the 5 preceding poor years.
Yeah.
So at some point, everything that we've been dumping into the economy must start showing a result. And I assume this is what the Minister and the National Planning Commission had in mind when they basically had to form a view on what will the economy do.
Re-imaging,
yep, it's very fancy, very semantic, very philosophical, but it's all tied to very specific amounts, very detailed, right up to